The desert is a place of isolation, struggle, and searching. In the biblical story, Moses leads his people through this wasteland, seeking the promised land. But what if this story isn't just history? What if it's about you, right now, in your daily life? Bill Donahue teaches that Moses' journey is not just about a physical land. It is the battle of the mind. The desert represents the carnal mind, the part of us bound to fear, desire, and ego. But what exactly is the carnal mind? It is the lower state of consciousness, ruled by material concerns, impulses, and worldly distractions. It keeps us locked in cycles of anxiety, greed, and attachment to fleeting pleasures. As Arthur W. Pink once said, even believers struggle with the carnal mind throughout life, as it resists God's sovereignty, yet ultimately must surrender to divine will. This inner battle is ongoing, but liberation is possible. The Israelites wandering for 40 years symbolize our own struggle to break free from these mental limitations, seeking enlightenment. Moses, in this sense, is not just a historical figure, but a symbol, the inner guide that leads us away from the limitations of the lower mind and toward divine wisdom. A mother and her young child sit in a small cafe. The child happily eats, swinging their feet under the table, unaware of the silent struggle in their mother's eyes. She watches with love, her hands wrapped around an empty coffee cup, its warmth long faded. She's hungry, but feeding her child matters more. Money is sparse, and every dollar has to stretch further than before. The world outside rushes on, people passing by, lost in their own worries. But here, in this moment, she endures. A father stumbles through his front door late at night. His children are asleep. He hasn't had the energy to play with them in weeks. The weight of 3 jobs, rising costs, and an uncertain world bear down on his shoulders. He wants to do more, be more, but exhaustion has consumed him. He tells himself he's doing it for them. The desert stretches endlessly before him. An old woman sits alone in winter's cold embrace. Layers of blankets shield her from the chill, but the heat remains off. She cannot afford both warmth and food. The government assistance she once relied on has been cut. No one should have to make such a choice, yet she endures. The desert is silent, and so is she. Suffering, as difficult as it is, can become a teacher. The Gnostic traditions tell us that through suffering, we are stripped of illusions. It is not the pain itself that destroys us, but our resistance to it. What if suffering is not the enemy, but the doorway to enlightenment? The path to the promised land. Everything in existence vibrates. Emotions carry frequencies. Fear and anger weigh heavy, while love and peace elevate. The key to spiritual ascension is transmuting lower emotions into higher states. Through meditation, sound, and intentional thought, we can shift our vibration, conquering the internal struggle and guarding our temple, our consciousness, from the external chaos of our everyday lives. As Marcus Aurelius said, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Most of our suffering is not from the outside world, but from our own minds. The voice in our head, the inner critic, can be our greatest enemy or our most powerful ally. Mastery of self begins with controlling this voice, replacing fear-based thoughts with truth and wisdom. As Socrates taught, he who is not a good servant will not be a good master. If we do not discipline our own mind, how can we hope to control anything else? Science now confirms what the ancients knew. Sound and thought shape reality. Just as sound vibrations can organize sand into geometric patterns, our thoughts shape the fabric of our own consciousness. You are the tuning fork. What frequency will you hold? Right now, take a breath. Observe the voice in your mind. Is it lifting you up or tearing you down? If the words you speak to yourself were spoken to a friend, would they feel loved or broken? Moses led his people out of the wilderness, but the true journey was not just one of physical relocation. It was a transformation of consciousness. The Israelites were not just escaping Pharaoh. They were shedding their old identities, unlearning servitude, and forging a new relationship with the divine. Likewise, our own escape from the wilderness of the carnal mind requires more than just an external shift. It demands internal alchemy. But who or what will lead you? In ancient traditions, the guide is always present, but the seeker must recognize it. For some, this guide is an inner knowing, a deep intuition that whispers truth beyond fear. For others, it is wisdom passed down in sacred texts, the lessons of enlightened masters, or even the silent wisdom of nature itself. Ultimately, the leader is within you, waiting to be acknowledged. The journey is yours to take, and every great transformation begins with a single choice. Will you continue in the patterns of suffering, reacting unconsciously to the world around you? Or will you choose awareness, presence, and mastery over your own mind? Tonight, before you sleep, take a moment of stillness. Observe your thoughts. Identify one that is rooted in fear, self-doubt, or judgment. Now replace it with a thought of love, gratitude, or faith. This is not just positive thinking. It is an act of spiritual alchemy, a deliberate shift in vibration. Tomorrow, when frustration rises, when the old patterns threaten to pull you back into the wilderness, pause, take a breath. This is where transformation happens, not in grand gestures, but in the subtle, daily choices to respond with wisdom rather than impulse, with love rather than fear. These small acts are not insignificant. They are the first steps out of the desert and into your own promised land. A state of mind where peace is not dependent on circumstances, where the storms of life no longer shake your foundation, and where you become the master of your own temple. The Exodus was never just about geography. It was, and always will be, about liberation of the soul.